Maree is a highly regarded business and community leader with a focus on sustainable development, business innovation, and the blue economy. After many years working to improve the reputation and profitability of a range of iconic tourist destinations, charities, radio stations, sport, and arts organisations and corporations, Maree has turned her focus to conscious capitalism, corporate responsibility, and sustainable development. She's hosted Australia's inaugural Corporate Responsibility Summit in 2005 and founded Models of Success and Sustainability, or MOS, which is a LinkedIn group, which I'm part of, the industry body for corporate responsibility and sustainability in Australia. She was a founding director of the Carbon Trade Exchange, the world's first end-to-end electronic platform for voluntary and regulated carbon credits, and is an international advisor for Be Sustainable, a global advisory firm bringing about positive change. Maree is also a national leader for Blue Australasia, a consulting firm focusing on blue economy solutions and innovation. She was one of the first 150 people in the world to be trained by former US Vice President Al Gore as a climate leader and has been named one of the 100 global sustainability leaders by ABC Carbon Singapore. I couldn't cut that bio short because there's just so much that this lady has done. So please welcome to the stage Maree Huxley.
Good morning. Really is wonderful to see so many of you after last night's efforts. So congratulations to all of the winners, and in fact congratulations to you all because you have all done marvellous work. I've been asked to push the boundaries a little bit today, so don't take it personally. But I think my thoughts and comments are important in the bigger scheme of things if we are going to succeed in bridging divides. So if today was a typical day on planet Earth, the human population will increase by a little over 208,000. About 360,000 people will be born and around 152,000 will die. The rich will get richer and the poor will get poorer. We'll lose another 75,000 acres of rainforest in the name of development and another 70,000 square kilometres to encroaching deserts as a result of human mismanagement and overpopulation. We will lose around 30 species. We will also add about 2,500 tonnes of chlorofluorocarbons into the atmosphere and about 15 million tonnes of carbon. So tonight the Earth will be a little bit hotter, its waters more acidic, and the fabric of life a little more threadbare. Many of the things that we value in life, that our future health and prosperity depends on, are in dire jeopardy. We all know that. Climate stability, the resilience and productivity of natural systems, the beauty of the natural world, and the biological diversity. But it's worth noting that this is not the work of ignorant people. It is in fact largely the result of work done by economists, people with science degrees, MBAs and PhDs, even Rhodes Scholars. Back in the early 90s, Nobel Peace Prize laureate Romanian-born and political activist Professor Elie Wiesel made a similar point when he said that the designers and the perpetrators of the Holocaust were some of the best educated people on earth, but their education did not serve them as an adequate barrier to barbarity. When questioned what was wrong with their education, Wiesel suggested it emphasises theories instead of values, concepts instead of human beings, abstraction rather than consciousness, answers rather than questions, ideology and efficiency rather than conscious. And I'm inclined to agree. How many educators apply emotional and spiritual intelligence to their teachings? We are all part of the whole, but until such time we are taught this, preferably at an early age, regardless of the subject matter we are studying, what chance do we have of being part of the solution? We will forever be part of the problem. And hand on heart, maybe apart from those from RMIT who are still glowing from their award last night, but hand on heart, can anyone truly say that their university is a true living laboratory inspiring the next generation with cutting-edge innovation and real-life practical skills? Even RMIT know that there is much more that they can do. I was part of the team that developed the global principles for how to communicate sustainability, and I can tell you that we won't achieve the uptake of sustainability with doom and gloom. We need to inspire and show what's possible with the latest technology and with a vision that is so big that it takes your breath away. The next generation, the millennials, are a different breed, and they need to have purpose. And they want to solve problems. But how are we inspiring them? What opportunities are we giving them to have real-life practical experiences through educational institutions? A recent national survey commissioned by Woolworths found that a third of Australian children struggled to identify fruit and vegetables and were confused about where produce came from. The study, which surveyed about 1,600 Australian children between the age of 6 and 17, so they weren't all very young, revealed 92% of those surveyed did not know bananas grew on plants. Research also found that 6 in 10 children are unaware that herbs such as mint grow from the ground. In 2012, a national study conducted by the Australian Council for Educational Research found children were just as confused back then. The survey, made up of Year 6 and Year 10 students, found holes in young people's basic food knowledge. 3 out of every 4 children, 75% from grades 6 to 10, thought cotton socks came from animals, and 27% were convinced yogurt grew on trees. For me, to bridge the gap, I think we need to make education more practical, apply theory to real-life situations. If our kids and many adults don't know where our food comes from, and if food security is one of the world's biggest issues, why are all educational institutions not living laboratories and growing their own food? I know UTAS do, congratulations, but how many campuses grow food? Can I just have a show of hands? There's a couple. Wow, okay, fantastic, that's great. Anyone grow mushrooms on waste? How about bees? Anyone growing their own bees? Couple of you, fantastic. What about fruit trees as part of that? Wonderful. What about aquaponics? Anyone growing fish as part of a closed loop system where the nutrient of the fish, fantastic, go in and feed the fertiliser to grow your various vegetables? So none of these things are expensive. In fact, cost very little but can make a great impact. Sure, I know that there are agricultural universities, but what about universities that teach economics, nutrition, natural resource management or biology? Why not make it practical to a range of subjects? And every university has a cafeteria, so surely we could all grow at least 5 or 6 items that can be served in the cafeteria that can be part of a learning across a number of different and diverse subjects. Anyone got uniforms for ground staff or security made from recycled PET or made out of bamboo, banana plants? No? Is it possible that will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas, most of you probably know him as a judge on X Factor, is it possible that he's doing more to show the world what's possible with recycled PET as a sustainable textile, perhaps than our universities are? And what about water vortices? Anyone using a water vortices instead of chemicals to descale lime from your cooling towers or keeping your ponds free of algae? Not to mention showing how you can use technology inspired by nature, such as a man-made water vortex, to get better crops, to increase yields, to keep your ponds and aquifers healthier, even clean polluted local rivers or treat wastewater. And does anyone have at least one document or book, even a sign that's printed on rock paper? Does anyone know what rock paper is? Do you even know that it exists? Of course. I asked that question and it's not meant to be patronising because there are many. Could I have a show of hands who doesn't know about rock paper? So I'm sorry, I'm not being patronising. There are a lot of people who don't. Okay, terrific. So rock paper is now being made from calcium carbonate. And there is no trees chopped down and there is no water being used. And how many are using innovation inspired by biomimicry? Is anyone using living filters to clean the air in their classrooms, in their schools, in their universities? Designing airflows the same as termites building their mounds to heat or cool the buildings? Dust particles from as far away as Africa can be captured by the rainforests in the Amazon and washed into the topsoil, so it washed into the plant, so when it rains, it replenishes the topsoil. Now that's a living system, and a living system that we can be using in our classrooms and our universities. 400 kilometres north of Stockholm, my colleague Gunter Pauli, who in fact has been the one behind the blue economy, ignited actually a land boom when he built a school that recycled the fresh air through a living system, allowing oxygen into the classroom, energising brain cells and resulting in healthier children with better academic results. Because it was a public school, the parents were jostling to actually get closer to the school and push the prices of real estate up. But how many universities have built this into their buildings? I'm certainly not against five-star buildings, and congratulations to those who are building them. But if they were innovating rather than just ticking the box to get the rating, sadly there are many underperforming five-star buildings right across the globe. Better than not doing anything, but are they truly the benchmark? I hope not. About 20 years ago, inspired by termite mounds popping up all over the world, there has been buildings that have been produced now inspired by, in fact, the termite mounds. This is one that was built in the mid-90s. Africa is a very hot country. This has no air conditioning. It's designed to deliberately move away from the big glass block, the office blocks that are typically expensive to maintain at a comfortable temperature, needing substantial heating in the winter and cooling in the summer. It's quite extraordinary that they've been able to reduce their energy costs by about 90%. So they're only paying around 10%. So what would 90% of savings look like if you had an air conditioner, if you didn't need your air conditioning or heating bills? Is anyone capturing and creating water from the atmosphere, especially in the hotter, drier states? This is a billboard that was produced and put up in Lima. Lima is it's surrounded by desert, very humid. They wanted to inspire students to get them engaged in the sciences at their university, and the billboard basically says, we're creating water out of air from this billboard, and the local community were coming down and filling up their buckets each day with the fresh water that was created, and for the first time ever, they had more students try and enrol than they had places for. In drought-stricken Port Augusta in South Australia, they're growing vegetables with almost zero fossil fuels and no fresh water. The water comes through pipes under the ground, which is fascinating. So it's next to the ocean. So you can see the water here. So next to the ocean, the water comes up through the pipes underneath. It does get desalinated. They're using solar to pretty much do that. And one of the really interesting things is that one of their secrets is that they spray water, it mists, and it actually goes through basically a cardboard filter. And that, in fact, keeps the air much cooler and moister. So they're traditionally watering their plants, but the coolness underneath is keeping the ground cool, and in fact, they can keep the whole temperature exactly as they need it as a result of the systems that they've put in place. Now, this project is inspiring the rest of the world because agriculture uses between 60 and 80% of the planet's scarce water resources. So food production that uses none at all is groundbreaking and a game changer. In fact, it's been so successful that they're now going to build a new one 40 times the size, about $19 million, a 20-acre greenhouse, fed virtually through seawater and minimal fossil fuels. So this is a typical game-changing innovation that makes up the 100-plus innovations that was presented to the Club of Rome by one of its members, Gunter Pauli, as a concept that is set to generate 100 million new jobs over the next 10 years, known as the blue economy. The Club of Rome was founded in the 60s as an informal association, an independent think tank, and do tank as they call it, made up pretty much of leading former politicians, business people, scientists, men and women who are long-term thinkers, interested in contributing to a systemic, interdisciplinary and holistic manner to a better world. The Club of Rome also shares a common interest for the future of humanity and the planet. So could I just ask how many of you, before the program came out, had been across the blue economy, who had heard Gunther speak? Are there many of you? A handful. The blue economy is definitely, for me, the most holistic of any of the sustainability concepts or initiatives. I'm personally very excited by it. I've been at the cutting edge of business through things like the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, the World Economic Forum, Business in the Community, part of forums like Green Growth Leaders. And I've seen the tremendous work that's being done by science that's transforming the world. But to me, as I say, the blue economy is the best of the best. And in terms of needing to change the way we think and act, well, I suppose not in my wildest dreams did I ever see myself graduating from a course, especially from the School of Economics, where my commitment to my colleagues when I left was that I'd spend a lot of time actually talking about flushing toilets and poo. But I think it shows you how the world is changing and what we really value today. And talking of poo, last night it was terrific to see that presentations were made on elephant poo. Well, I was delighted earlier in the week when I was travelling around Tasmania to see that they're now making wombat poo. So it's really important to be looking at and using what we have locally to build and grow jobs. And for those of you who did the workshop yesterday, you would realise that I could talk for a long time about poo. And probably one of the biggest issues that we're facing at the moment in the world is that we've actually moved from losing a lot of the caterpillar poo when we actually moved from nylon to silk over the last 100 years. Most people are probably not aware of the fact that one of the many benefits of using caterpillars and growing the silk is one of the byproducts is you get about 9 tonnes of caterpillar poo, fertiliser, per every tonne of the silk. And they're now spinning the silk the same way that the spiders make the silk and using it as a replacement for titanium dug out of the ground in medical procedures. So they're making replacement cartridges with them, they're using it for sutures, so all inspired by nature. And with China having such a major problem, there is definitely, with land degradation, there is definitely a link from having actually not continued to grow and produce silk over the years. So how did the blue economy start and why do I think it's important? Well, it all started back in '94, 3 years before the Kyoto Protocol, when serial entrepreneur Gunther Pauli, who had just built the first eco-factory for eco-cleaning products in the world, was approached by the then rector of the UN University in Japan to imagine a competitive business model in a world guided by the Kyoto Protocol. Pauli was to model an economic system that generated no waste and no emissions, yet created jobs, contributed social capital, and not entail a higher cost. He had the opportunity to imagine how we could emulate the productivity and evolutionary interactions of natural ecosystems where waste for one is food for another. 20 years later, and the philosophy of zero emissions, where waste is converted into revenues and unused yet widely available resources are cascading into a value generation. We can stand back and look at nearly 200 implemented projects, the generation of about $4 billion in investments, and an impact as a concept that's created an estimated 3 million jobs. The most widely copied is the farming of mushrooms on coffee waste, and the most advanced is the biorefinery refining thistles. Who would have thought that thistles could be such an important product in our world? They produce 8 types of oils and very valued enzymes to produce cheese. The blue economy incorporates all of the elements of the current wave of innovation defined by the natural edge. It's inspired by nature but led by physics. The economic model emulates natural systems where industrial activities are clustered with cascading flows of material and energy in order to dramatically increase humanity's capacity to respond to the basic needs of all. It builds on the green economy but does it in a systemic way with new business models, radical resource recovery, upcycling of waste as opposed to burning or dumping, using renewable energy sources of energy, along with green chemistry and green nanotechnology to restore ecosystems, build the economy and generate prosperity for all. It differs from the green economy in that it makes a systemic rather than linear approach to solve problems. It's inspired from nature and it's more innovative rather than expensive, and it generates zero waste. Like nature, it's competitive and not subsidised. It creates, not cuts jobs, and provides more value than cutting jobs. So we all understand why we need to change. The current economic system has created great wealth and brought hundreds of millions out of poverty. But in its search for growth, it's increasingly become a destructive force that is stimulating so many of the crises that we face today. If we're to restore some sense of balance to the world, we need to build a bridge, particularly around systems design led by physics, inspired by nature, with zero waste, and disrupt our siloed business-as-usual frameworks. We need new innovative business models as well as the technology capable of bringing competitive products and services to the market, responding to basic needs while building social capital and hence mindful living in harmony with nature's evolutionary plan. Personally, I see this as the opportunity that Christine Milne was talking about with small to medium enterprises, because after all, they are the ones that employ 90% of the workforce. The primary focus for the blue economy thus far has been Europe, Africa and South America. In the Asia-Pacific region, interest has been ignited by talks from Gunta. The problem has been for most where to start. There have been many businesses that have tried to get up, but they've been challenged. How do we in fact start? And that's going to be my next venture. I'm in the middle of establishing the Blue Economy Institute, a research and training organisation to inspire systemic change with zero waste. There's currently only one place in the world that you can go to study this, which is in Hungary. So with a dedicated team, and certainly with great collaboration and support from many around the world, we're about to develop a range of accredited and non-accredited courses so that in fact we can take this concept to the rest of the world. But much of it, however, will be very practical with living examples in our communities to show us how to do this. And it was terrific yesterday to hear that Tasmania is setting up a cluster, and it will be great to have the opportunity to potentially work with you. So in your universities, you're all obviously measuring and minimising your water waste and energy, and many of you are doing marketing campaigns around behaviour change. But what about designing a new 5-star buildings? But I truly want to ask how many of you are doing them with your students? Are they part of the curriculum? Are they actually doing the work on the university? I'm not suggesting slave labour here. I'm talking about giving them real-life learning experiences. And my experience tells me that it will be uncomfortable for the first year, but what will happen is each year they will try and outdo themselves. And they are real-life learning examples of challenging each other on how we're going to solve the problems that are going to assist certainly hopefully make your jobs easier. Could I just have a show of hands how many of you are actually doing that with the students, so there's a couple, and that's fantastic. And I'd like to hope and think that that is going to continue, because to me that is part of building that divide. There's a whole lot of untapped, unbridled energy out there waiting for real-life experiences. I'm forever being told that, people don't have budgets. Well, here is a means to, in fact, be able to do something affordably and tap into this enthusiasm. If we want to talk about the Great Divide, I think it starts with our own facilities being too theoretical rather than practical. Former Irish President and UN Climate Envoy Maree Robinson recently summed up the recent talks in New York very aptly by stating, "The message from the Climate Summit is that it's not business as usual with a little bit of green attached. It's a changing course." Over the past decade, increased awareness of climate change and the growing global momentum to tackle these issues, climate change, resource scarcity and poverty, have indeed challenged the business environment and community and put an uncomfortable spotlight on the way companies operate. I put it to you that the uncomfortable spotlight needs to also be put on educational institutions so they better prepare their graduates for the real world. And I say that based on a lot of recruiters and a lot of companies out there who are saying, yeah, we have intern programs, we love to get our university students, but they are still not as prepared as we would like them to be for the real world. And that even comes from as far as Yale and Harvard. In the beginning, Stephen Sterling suggested a similar thing, that we're not quite ready for that. The world is changing and we can't solve the problems with the same thinking that we used when we created them. So what's the divide? I think it's compliance breeding mediocrity, the lack of leadership, and the fact that we're forgetting how important it is to cross-fertilise our students into other curriculum. After all, most people will have 7 or 8 careers in their lifetime, not jobs, but different careers. Let's also be clear, universities are big businesses with an important role to fulfil. So like many big businesses, they're interested in compliance, benchmarking, incrementalism, rather than transformation. I put to you that we need a revolution, real transformation, not incrementalism if we're going to win the battle and bridge the divide. Let's be smart in the language that we use to reflect what governments or private funders want, but at the same time, let's not lose sight of what we're here to do. Mr. Abbott wants to create jobs. Let's show Mr. Abbott how you're creating the jobs of the future and graduating students with real-life skills, and that can grow the economy of this country. Sustainability is evolving. Green is less bad, blue is more good. I put it to you that if you want to bridge the divide, the blue must be the new green, as it provides systemic thinking with innovation and technology with multiple benefits. So next time you buy a product or get involved in a project, ask yourself, does it only serve one purpose or are there multiple benefits? Doing less bad is not what we should aspire to. Polluting is still polluting. Putting toxins rather than fresh air into our classrooms is not a living example to future generations. I know you can rise up to the challenge. Let's instill value and values into the education system, elevate the level of thinking, and inspire a new generation of business leaders to do things differently. I was asked to be provocative. I hope I have in some way achieved this. Thank you.